Hey guys, what's up? It's Claire and welcome to my channel. So I got a lot of requests to make a video on how I did my Common App application and how I wrote the supplemental essays for a lot of the top tier colleges like the Ivies, Duke, Northwestern, and Georgia Tech. And hopefully to answer some of your questions, instead of just reading out my essays to you, I wanted to share with you some of the mistakes that I made during my own application and how you can avoid making the same mistakes during your own college application journey. So without further ado, I'm going to share with you 7 ways to craft the perfect college application essay. So let's get to it. Number 1, always write more than multiple drafts. Especially for a Common App essay, never write it in one sitting. After you write your initial draft, go take a break, maybe come back hours later or even days later so you can have a fresh look on your writing. There will be new ideas that come to mind, and there will be times where you can catch some big mistakes in your writing that you didn't see the first time around. For me personally, my Common App took over 15 drafts and a little over 2 months to perfect, but I couldn't be happier with the ending result. And from the initial draft to the final draft, it has changed a lot. It was much more refined and focused, and if you use your initial draft, there will be a big chance that your ideas are not coherent enough or they're a little bit too scattered for the admission officers to realize what you want to say. Okay, number 2, always get somebody else to read over your writing. So here's the catch. Never share your essays with your friends. First off, it might seem a little counterintuitive, but now is the one time that you guys have to choose the path yourself and then create your own story. And I assure you, if you have a genius idea and it gets stolen by somebody else, you're gonna regret it. What I do recommend is that you get your parents or your teachers or at least 3 people from different fields to read your essay and give you their first impressions. Now, don't give them your first draft, maybe give them your 5th draft. And if they can answer the question, who are you and what is your dream, by the end of the essay, then you are on the right track. So for me, I asked around 4 different adults. 2 of them were English teachers, 1 of them was a researcher, and then another one was an engineer. They all gave me different feedback, but every single person said the same thing. They couldn't tell me who I was or how my characteristics were or what my aspirations were. They only knew I was a student who was interested in writing because my Common App was about writing, and I wrote a story. So that's when I decided to scrap my essay and start all over, because from an outsider's point of view, if they can't understand what I'm trying to convey and who I am, that's going to be very, very costly in the long run for your college applications. So make sure you keep that in mind. Number 3, always have a theme. So for every single question on your Common App or on your supplemental, you need to have a clear theme or a real vision about what you want to do and how you're going to pursue that. That theme is going to be the hook that gets the colleges to realize that you can contribute to their school in a positive way. For me, that was my biggest mistake. I wish I could have caught it sooner, but I realized it after the fact. I submitted it because I had somebody read over my entire application, like holistically, including the short answer question, the supplementals, the Common App, and my actual Common App. That's why the last point that I mentioned is very, very, very important. So to give you an example, my Brown application is exactly what you should not do. So for my Brown video portfolio, I made it into an introduction of myself and talked about my love for traveling and cultural immersion. For the next question, it said to elaborate your extracurriculars, in which I talked about my writing experience with the Odyssey, which was one of my core strengths and activities in my Common App. Now, for the 3rd question about my academic interests, I wrote about science. This question is one of the most fundamental parts of the Brown application, yet I wrote about science, which number 1, I didn't really have that much experience in. Number 2, I didn't have that many awards to show that I was genuinely interested in science. And number 3, it kind of went against the scores that I got, because all of my science AP courses, like AP Chem, AP Environmental Science, I all had lower scores in those than my humanities subjects like AP Lang, AP European History, or Human Geography. The approach that I chose was not very smart, and now looking back at it, I can see why Brown decided to reject me, simply because my core argument was too scattered, and I didn't use my strength to show that I can contribute to the school in any way. Alright, now for the last question, it asked about an interest outside of school. For that, I wrote about my NISY experience and how I really liked learning Korean in a foreign country. Now, when you look at my Brown portfolio holistically, it first talked about liking to travel, liking cultural immersion, then it talked about writing, then it talked about science, and then it talked about learning languages. So this application was very, very scattered. It didn't stick to one clear theme. So when you're applying, make sure you pick one story and stick with it so your colleges can see that you have potential and you are genuinely interested. Even if you don't know exactly what you want to do, just like me, I literally don't know what I want to do yet. Just tell a story about yourself, and once you get into the school, you always have the choice to change your major or choose it later on. Okay, number 4. Always make your writing heartfelt and personal. So one of the biggest problems for my essays, especially the questions that asked about like, why do you like the school? What about the school attracts you? My essays were really quite boring, to say the least. My writing style is very descriptive for fictional pieces like stories or novels. But when I'm talking about myself, I tend to be a little bit too serious, and many people often said that my storyline was like flat or uninteresting or just very monotone throughout. There was nothing eye-catching about my essays. When these admission officers are reading hundreds of essays in one day, you need to make your story memorable in some way. So make sure you somehow find a way to integrate some like quirky jokes, or to start off with a cool punchline or end with like a strong finale to leave that lasting impression. Never make your essays dry. By humanizing your essay, colleges can see your character through your writing, and they can also tell that you're a human being just like them. Number 5, work backwards. So colleges often ask like, what is a challenge you faced and how you've learned from that experience. What I mean by that is I made a list of all of my experiences that I can think of and products of my work, and then picked the ones that had the most interesting storyline or the most concrete evidence. So by reflecting on how you felt during that certain experience during that time, it kind of gives you like the gift of hindsight that allows you to pick out the things that you did wrong, the things that you could have done, or the things you would have changed. So by turning those reflections into a story, you not only show like personal growth, but also colleges can see that you are a person of perseverance and you are willing to learn from your past mistakes. Number 6, always find the unconventional route. So from what I've seen, since a lot of people sent me their essays and asked me to read them, the most common application stories are very, very cliche topics and have become way too ubiquitous. So for example, as an Asian American, I have my personal beliefs and experiences of life as like a minority. A lot of other people will be writing the same thing as you, so your essay may be covered up by other people. Other topics include things like talking about your favorite sport or how your team sport has changed you or made you like a better person. This is good, but still very vague and very common, so only use it if that sport is very unique, like maybe like fencing or something. Only use it if that sport is a focal point of your application. Other than that, you might want to pick a different topic. And finally, the last type of essay is about seeing something really shocking or having some type of like revelation from like one experience. So maybe like seeing a homeless person or going to an animal shelter and seeing how inhumane that is, or something along those lines that make you feel guilty. These ideas are great and absolutely okay, but you have to have some type of definitive evidence that you are interested in that cause. For example, like community service or any type of volunteer work that took up a very, very big part of your time. If you don't have that concrete evidence in your experience, then it is not going to turn out as a strong essay. Number 7, always have lower expectations. This is the most important part that I want you guys to remember. Even if you didn't even watch the whole video, this is the one message that I want to convey. So here is the honest truth. I know a lot of people a lot of my friends who have done amazing things. They have great stats, amazing awards. They poured so much time and effort into their extracurriculars. But then during the college application season, they didn't put enough work and stress into their essays. If you're like the top of your class right now, great. But by winning a lot of awards or doing very, very well in high school, you have the confidence that your resume will get you into that school. But just remember, you cannot skim over your work. You have to take this very, very seriously. Same for people with legacies or recommendations or some type of connections with colleges. Those are not the automatic tickets to get in. The most important part is that the college applications process is not a meritocracy. Even if you put in a lot of work during high school, it's not necessarily going to mean that you can get into your dream school. Process is more like a game, and you have to play smart. It's like you have to sell your story to the admission office while competing against a very, very big pool. And especially since these days there are like, you're competing against people with counseling firms or people who are paying others to help polish their essays and stuff. It's going to be very, very competitive. And it's not fair, and I agree, but it's reality, so make sure you catch yourself before it's too late. Okay, so that's basically it for today's video. I hope you found those tips helpful, because when I was applying, I personally watched a lot of those videos where people just like read their essays, but I didn't really find that too helpful because it left the interpretation up to me to figure out what they did right. So I hope that the 7 tips I mentioned can give you a good starting point for your applications. If you haven't already, check out my college stats video where I talked about like the schools I applied to, what I did in high school, and my stats and all that other stuff. And leave a like and comment if you have any other questions, and I'll try my best to help you. And so yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.